Hi guys, today I thought I would break down some of the most common acronyms and abbreviations and curly girl terms, put them all in one place to act as a little glossary for you. Now, I have done a sort of jargon busting video before. I've just watched the video back and all I can say is wow. You could see how nervous I was, my editing wasn't very good. I had a mic on because I was too scared to talk loudly, and it made my voice go really weird, so I'm redoing it basically. So here are the most common curly girl terms and abbreviations that I have heard. So a lot of these I've just done off the top of my head, so they're going to be a little bit mishmashed, but I'm going to try and make it sort of as logical as possible. So I'm going to start with plopping. What was the joke I made in the video? If you hear someone talking about plopping, chances are they're not talking about the curry, what happens after the curry they had last night or something. I thought it was really funny, but looking back it's really cringe. But anyway, plopping is when your hair is wet, so you've just washed your hair, you take a t-shirt or an old pyjama top or some sort of piece of fabric, flip your head upside down and just plop it onto the t-shirt or top or whatever, then wrap your hair up in it. So the way I do it, I'm not going to demonstrate because my hair's dry and I haven't got a top to hand, but I'll try and explain it. So you've got the t-shirt, your head is upside down, your hair's all plopped onto it. You try and get all the hair to sort of sit here, and you wrap the top over so it sort of meets like this. I hope you can imagine it. So you've got the t-shirt top over your head, you then sort of twist it and tie it, and that sort of keeps your hair in one place. So that's good for... Why do people plop? It's not a way of drying your hair, don't let it mislead you. It's basically a way of keeping your hair in place so your hair can soak up the styling products and it helps the curls form because it's sort of holding them in place. So that awful definition leads me on to two terms that are to do with plopping. First of all, you have micro plopping. Now, if like me, your hair doesn't like a full wet plop, it makes my hair go a little bit squished, even if I just sort of loosely plop. You can micro plop, which you've seen me talk about on Instagram and here on YouTube. That is when you take an old pyjama top, is what I use personally, while your hair is wet, and you just gently give your hair a little scrunch. That helps remove the excess water, it helps remove the excess styling products, it speeds up drying time, which plopping doesn't, and it helps if you've brush styled your hair just up and out like normal, it helps put a little bit of that bounce back into your curls. Now, the other word that has just popped into my head is snakes. I don't know if this is still sort of used in the sort of curly girl community, but if you are confused about people talking about getting snakes, that is when they've plopped for a while and their hair is sort of stuck to their head, so it looks like their hair is covered in snakes. Now, I always thought that you wanted snakes when you have plopped, when I used to do it, but my hair, once I got the snakes, I could never get it out and I could never get it to look back to normal. So I don't know if snakes are a good or a bad thing, but if you were confused and if snakes are still a thing, that's what it means. The next abbreviation that I see get asked quite a lot is, what does SOTC mean? That stands for scrunch out the crunch, and that is a way of breaking that cast, that hard crunchy shell that forms around the hair once it's dry. Now, some people like to scrunch out the crunch with bare hands, some people like to use satin scarves. I personally like to use a serum. So my two favourites are either the Coconut Capillary Argan Serum or the Imbue Curl Energizing Hydration Serum. You've seen me use both of them. Now, the most common way I scrunch out the crunch, I think that makes sense. I use a little bit of serum. I do one pump of the Imbue or 2 or 3 drops of the coconut. I just smooth my hands over my hair like this. I'll explain what this is called in a minute. And then give it a little gentle scrunch just to put that bounce back in, and that's how I scrunch out the crunch. Now, it is sort of recommended you wait until your hair is 100% dry and that cast is 100% sort of solid. But I find it's not the end of the world if I scrunch up the crunch a little bit prematurely. I'm sure it does add a little bit of frizz, but my hair doesn't seem to mind it. ACV is another abbreviation that you might see floating around. That stands for apple cider vinegar, and you can get it in places like Home Bargains and B&M, most health food stores. You need to be looking for apple cider vinegar that has the mother in it. That's the sort of gross looking sediment that floats around the bottom. That's where all the goodness is. And apple cider vinegar is a good way of removing product buildup if you are strictly following the curly girl method, but you don't want to just co-wash if you need that little bit of extra. Raking, when referring to applying a product, is when you put the product on your hands and your fingers act as a comb, or as a rake, funnily enough, and that's a good way of applying products. I find it depends on sort of what product I'm using. Raking can either give my hair nice clumps or it can break up the clumps. So I generally tend to rake through products if I'm not then going to brush style. If I'm going to brush style, what do I do? To be fair, I might just rake it anyway, but I tend to rake before I brush style, if that makes sense. For example, these curls today, I don't know what's wrong with my brain today. This is from when I washed my hair yesterday. I just raked through some all-in-one styler by Lush and some mousse, and that's it. That was just through raking and scrunching. But for example, today for my refresh, I did the praying hands method when I was applying my gel to my wet hair. Now, what's praying hands method? That is, you've seen me demo it already, is when you put your hands together as if you're praying on either side of your hair and just smooth it down. It's a good way of, I use it to scrunch out the crunch, I use it to sort of glaze my products over, and it can help form clumps depending on A, how well your hair clumps, or B, how wet your hair is. I tend to find if I apply mousse with praying hands, that's a good way of encouraging my hair to form its natural clumps without the need for faffing around with brush styling. Now, clumps. I told you this is going to be all jumbled up, guys. A clump is literally, mine are quite small today. This is a clump. It's a bit of a fluffy clump, but it's a clump nonetheless. It's just the name that refers to a group of hair that forms a single curl. Some people can get really big, juicy clumps. Some people need to curl train to get clumps. Some people, their hair will not clump no matter what. But just one piece of advice I would say is try not to sort of force your hair to go into clumps that are bigger than it naturally wants to go into. Now, there is a technique called the super soaker method, and that is a way of helping your hair to go into its natural clumps. I'm not 100% sure on how to do it because my hair doesn't tend to like having loads and loads and loads of water added to it, but as far as I am aware, super soaker method is once you've washed your hair, you just take sort of handfuls of water and you just scrunch all that water into your hair. It's similar to squish to condish, which I'll go into a little bit more detail in a little bit. But yeah, if you add lots of water whilst you're styling, that I think that's the super soaker method, and that can help your hair form clumps if that's the look you're going for. Frizz is often something that people want to avoid with curly hair because curly hair is prone to frizz. I've got a little bit going on today. It's these fine hairs that stick out. They stick out of the clumps and the curls. They can be a nuisance, but if you learn to embrace your frizz, it's not the end of the world. I do often say frizz equals volume. So this is day 2 hair and I've not done much brush styling, so it's quite fluffy, quite frizzy, but I am just embracing it because it adds to the overall volume and bigness of my hair. Clarifying is what it's called when you remove product buildup. So I have done a video talking about ways of clarifying. So you have co-washing, you have shampooing, you have apple cider vinegar, which I've talked about, or you have what's called the lemonade rinse. I believe that is just adding lemon juice to your conditioner if you're strictly following the curly girl method. I could be wrong, but I think that's what lemonade is. And that is a way of removing that product buildup if you don't want a shampoo, but if co-washing doesn't work for you. Protein. I'm going to get this on a t-shirt. Protein is the building blocks of the hair. So if you straighten your hair or you bleach your hair, that can break down those building blocks in your hair, and that can lead to overstretchy, fluffy, frizzy, dull hair. So as a result, you need to use products with protein in it or a protein treatment to help rebuild those building blocks, give your hair some strength, shine, shape, all of that goodness. I have got, I think, 3 or 4 videos now talking about protein if you guys wanted to go into a little bit more detail. Now, I think I've got this the right way around. Please feel free to correct me. Hydration and moisture. Hydration refers to water, and that is what goes into the outer cuticle of your hair. Moisture refers to the inner cuticle of your hair, and that is generally achieved with products. So oils, rich deep conditioning treatments, stuff like that. They moisturize, whereas water hydrates. So they are 2 different things. So you do need to make sure that you have adequate amounts of hydration and moisture in your routine. Curl training. That is a way of, as the name suggests, training your curls. Now, not every curl type can be trained to look a certain way. So for example, if you have loose, relaxed 2B waves, you, without using some sort of heat tool, you won't be able to naturally curl your hair into tight 3C coils because that's not your hair type. However, if you have sort of a mixture of the 2 curl patterns, so for example, I have 2C, 3A hair. I've got a mixture of loose waves and ringlets. I can train my curls to go all into 3A curls. I think it was the last video I did with the Be Hairful brush. That's a way of curl training, and a lot of curlies use some form of curl training, whether that's finger coiling, brush styling, using curl formers, using the flexi rods. They use that sort of curl training method when they're in what's called the transition phase. So that's when you are resetting your curls memory, which is a thing, believe it or not. So you've been straightening your hair for years, you want to go back to being curly, you need to sort of reset your curls natural memory, and curl training is a good way of doing that and making the transition stage a little bit easier. Buff. Mine's gone walkabout again. I swear the stuff in this house has legs. A buff is a cylindrical piece of fabric that you use to protect your hair while you sleep. It looks very fetching. It doesn't make you at all look like Marge Simpson. Now, this curly term has been updated since I did my last video. A buff, or a willow it's called, that is basically a loose ponytail that you put on top of your head, either while you sleep or just because that's what you want it to look like. So a pineapple refers to sort of the 3B and up, the tighter coily afro hair, whereas a willow refers to a looser curl pattern similar to mine. I believe that is the distinction. Brush styling, I have briefly touched on that. Brush styling is, as the name suggests, using a brush to style your curls. So if you wanted to see a couple of tutorials on how to do that, I recommend looking at my last video, because that was ribbon curling and brush coiling. That's a good way of, like I said earlier, helping you sort of ease your hair through the transition phase. CG stands for curly girl, CGM stands for curly girl method. Now, I followed the curly girl method strictly for 3 years, aside from dyeing my hair. I didn't use any shampoos or any sort of brush styling at all. It was during lockdown I started experimenting, and I found that my hair likes the occasional shampoo and it likes being brush styled. So as a result, I no longer strictly follow the curly girl method. Got distracted by a bee outside my window there. Now, I've mentioned this before. STC stands for squish to condition. So that is, after you've washed your hair, apply your conditioner, detangle, you run a little bit of water over your hair, give it a really good scrunch, and then sort of rinse and repeat. That's a good way of ensuring that your hair gets fully saturated with that conditioner, and I do like to do that if my hair's feeling particularly dry and thirsty. It's a really good way of locking in all that goodness from the conditioner. Finger coiling is another method of curl training. That is when you use your fingers to coil your hair. So there are two ways of doing it. If I'm being really quick, I just take the clump and just do that with it. If I have a little bit more time, I do finger rolling. So I pinch my hair in between the fingers, roll it up, and then gently unravel it. That's just another way of curl training. I don't tend to use my fingers because it's time consuming and I can't be bothered a lot of the time. But I do it on my top layers and these front bits, because as you can see, the curls drop quite quickly out of them. So I do occasionally finger roll any sort of wonky bits. Now the last term I'm gonna describe, just because my phone is getting hot because it's rubbish and it's running out of space, is a refresh. Now refreshing your hair is just restyling it in between wash days. So you can either do a dry refresh. When you apply your products to dry hair, I like to use a foam if I'm going to do a dry refresh, because that's less sticky than using a mousse. You could do a damp refresh, which as the name suggests, you get your hair a little bit damp, then apply your products. Or you could do a full wet refresh. That's where you basically re-wet your hair as if you're going to wash it, but instead of washing it, you just style it. And if I'm doing a full wet refresh, that's usually when my hair is on day 5, so the curls have just gone, but it doesn't need washing yet. I will do that to give me an extra couple of days. And that's usually when I'll do some sort of brush styling or curl training. So, I think I've said everything. Just scanning my little list. Yeah. So I think I've said everything. Let me know down in the comments if I've forgotten anything, or if there's anything you guys want to know, anything you guys want to see, anything. Give me a shout. Let's talk. Next week's video, I think I might demo why I protect my hair while I sleep. I think that'd be quite fun, because I always end up looking like a poodle. So yeah, next week, why do you need to protect your hair while you sleep? I think that's what we're going to do. I've said it now, so that's what I'm doing. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. What's my usual spiel I do at the end? Thank you for joining me today. Like I said, let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, share this video, get me out there, tell your friends. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed so far. I hope you're enjoying this channel, and I will see you next week, guys. Bye. Trying it with the front camera instead of selfie mode, and on my eye hurts after a cracking start because I can't see myself. Paranoid, I've got lippy on my teeth. That stands for crunch. I said method. How Hampshire was that? I feel really close to the camera. I hope this camera still is facing the right way. CG and CGM, they are the, if it's blah, 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 blah.